Good morning, friends. My name is Jyotis Joy. Today, I'm here to teach about experimental method, which is one of the method used in educational psychology. So, let's have a look about experimental method. Experimental method. As I mentioned earlier, experimental method is one of the methods of educational psychology. Educational psychology may be defined as the branch of psychology which studies the behavior of the learner in relation to his educational environment, which means it's it is mainly related to the studies of the behavior of the learner in relation to his educational needs and his environment. Educational psychology has been defined by various psychologists and scholars. There are four methods of educational psychology. First one is introspection method, second is observational method, and the third one is experimental method, fourth is case study method. Let's discuss about experimental method. Experimental method is considered the most scientific, precise, objective and systematic method of studying behavior. It lays emphasis on performing experiments. As its name like experimental method, it mainly focuses to experiments, that is by doing things. The word experiment comes from a Latin word experimentum, meaning a trial or test. The first experimental lab established by Wilhelm Wundt in Leipzig, Germany. Wilhelm Wundt is considered as the father of experimental psychology. In experimental method, the investigator tries to study the cause and effect relationship regarding the human behavior by performing experiments, that is objective observation under rigidly controlled condition. That is, it is the observation under controlled conditions. Only in this method, that is only in experimental method, we can find out or we can study the cause and effect relationship, not in any other methods. The next is experiments make possible controlled observation, variation of factors, perfect quantification, and rigorous objective checking of hypotheses. The experimental method uses a systematic procedure called experimental design. We will discuss the experimental designs later. Now we are discussing some of the definitions of experimental method. According to J.W. Best, experimental research is the description and analysis of what will be or what will occur under carefully controlled conditions. A method of demonstration, cause and effect relationship, purposefully manipulating a factor thought to produce a change in the second factor. These are some of the definitions of experimental method. The main features of experimental method. There are three types of variables, that is independent variable, dependent variable and intervening or controlled variables. Independent variables means variables that influence the study. Dependent variable means dependent variables that cause a change due to the independent variable, which means independent variable can be manipulated. That is, it stands for a cause while the dependent variable stands for the effect of that cause, and its value depends on the change of independent variable. The other conditions or factors that influence the cause and effect relationship are called intervening variables. The next feature is it is essentially to require at least two persons, that is the experimenter and the subject. Usually the experimental method is applied on one person in a random order. It is observed under controlled conditions. In this method, the investigator tries to study the cause and effect relationships regarding human behavior by performing experiments. As we already mentioned that only in this method we can study about the cause and effect relationship. The next is steps of experimental method. First step is identifying the problem, that is understand what the problem is. Second step, defining the problem, clearly state or define the problem. Third is framing hypothesis, that is developing alternative or tentative solutions for the problem. The fourth step is collection of data, collecting data from all possible areas. The fifth is testing the hypothesis, checking each hypothesis based on the collected data. And the sixth step is analysis and interpretation of data, that is by using statistical analysis. And the seventh step is, that is after identifying and defining and framing hypothesis and after collecting the data and testing the hypothesis and after the analysis and the interpretation, we found out some of the findings or we may reach some conclusion. So that is the last step, findings and conclusion. The main techniques of experimental method, which is also known as experimental designs. There are 4 experimental designs. First is the control test or single group test. Second one is control group design. Third one is multiple group design. Fourth one is designs involving rotation. First one is the control test or single group test. In these designs, it is not necessary to have 2 different individuals or groups of subjects for the experiment. Here a single individual or a group of individuals can work as subject for the experiment. The subject, whether an individual or a group of individuals, is first objectively observed under normal condition and then under different sets of changed conditions, and conclusions are then drawn by comparing the differences, which means suppose in a psychological laboratory all necessary arrangement instruments are taken and just one individual or a group of individuals are about to take this test. So here we are measuring or we are studying the effect of fear stimulus. At first, this group is subjected to a non-fear condition, that is under normal conditions their body pulse, heartbeat, blood pressure and in changes in respiration or the functioning of digestives and other internal systems will be noted. And after that, then the subject will exposed to a sudden fear like a snake or a loud noise or darkness, etc. And then the changes in the readings as the result of the intensity of the fear response will be recorded from various instruments, and the difference in the second and initial readings will then indicate the different degrees of intensity of fear. So this is how this test can be done. And the second is control group design. Control group design. In control group design, 2 separate groups needed. The first one is experimental group and the second one is control group. Experimental group means the group of subjects who are exposed to all experimental condition including the independent variable. We already mentioned independent variable can be manipulated. It stands for a cause. So in experimental group, the group of subject who are exposed to all experimental condition including the independent variable. So then the control group means a group of subject who are exposed to all experimental condition or exposed to the same experimental conditions except the independent variable. So in experimental group it includes the independent variable, and in control group it does not include the independent variable. So they are equated or matched on various traits like age, sex, intelligence and other personality characteristics. Then the one group, the control group, is given sugar capsules and tested on some intelligence test. At the same time, the experimental group is given drug capsule and tested on the same intelligence test. Then the results are noted. There is a one-to-one correspondence in the two equated groups. That is the control group design. The third one is multiple group design. Sometimes we have to experiment with more than two groups for arriving at the appropriate condition, which is more for comparison. So in multiple group design we need two or more groups. For that this kind of design is using. And the fourth design is designs involving rotation. In this experiment it involves presenting two or more stimulating situations to the experimental subject, as many sequences as necessary to control the serial effects of fatigue or practice. So these were the four experimental designs. Then let's discuss about the merits of experimental method. As we already mentioned, it is the most systematic method and condition can be completely controlled. The data can be analyzed in an objective manner, that is not in a subjective manner. It is analyzed in an objective manner, so it is reliable. A third one is the cause and effect relationship of individual's behavior can be established. The findings of the experimental method are open to critical experimentation and verification. This method has a scientific approach, and it is due to its use that psychology has become a science. So only in this method psychology is due to this scientific approach we can say psychology has become a science. It provides objective and precise information about the problems. It provides innovative ideas for further experimentation. The different mental processes of the child can be studied under various conditions by controlling them by one. From that we come to know the child better after analyzing the data. The experimenter can record the dependent variables more precisely. These were the merits of experimental method. Next, we have to discuss the demerits of experimental designs. As human behavior is changeable, so all behavior cannot be quantified. Next is the experimental method is costly and time consuming. In this method must have specialized skills to conduct experiments. Next is the tool used in the experiments may not be satisfactory, so therefore the obtained data may not be reliable. Artificiality in observations, that is one of the main demerits of a experimental method. So because it is doing in a controlled manner, artificiality is there. The experiments conducted on animals cannot be directly applicable to humans. So in this method Researchers identify and define variables, formulate hypotheses, manipulate the variables, and collect the data on results. Extra variables are carefully controlled to minimize a potential impact to an outer experiment. So till here we discussed about the experimental method. Experimental method is considered as the most scientific and objective method for studying behavior. Here we try to study the cause and effect relationship regarding the human behavior by performing experiments. That is objective observations under rigidly controlled laboratory-like condition. The key factor of this method is the controlling of conditions or variables. There are mainly three types of variables, that is independent, dependent, and intervening. Independent variable stands for the cause and dependent variable for the effect of that cause. The other conditions or factors that influence the cause and effect relationship are called intervening variables. In an experiment, all such variables need to be controlled. For exercising such control, we may make use of various experimental designs like control test or single group design or control group design or matching group design, and designs involving rotation depending upon the demands of the experiment and availability of the sources. I hope you understood the topic. Thank you.